Who was Bran the Builder? How did he build so many notable structures in Westeros? And exactly what magic did he utilise to carry out his work? Hi, I'm Eldrick Stoneskin, and if you enjoy theories and analysis of A Song of Ice and Fire, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. Bran the Builder is said to be an ancient and legendary figure who is remembered as having lived during the Age of Heroes and as having been the founding member of House Stark, with this mythological figure having gained his moniker of Bran the Builder due to having been credited as constructing some of the most ancient and amazing structures around Westeros after the devastation of the Long Night, with some of his building techniques being so advanced they seemingly don't fit the technological timeline of this world. Having designed and possibly built a round tower of legendary strength at Storm's End while assisting during Godsgrief, and another round tower at his ancestral seat of Winterfell, which we now know as the First Keep, which is quite amazing, as round towers weren't thought to have been capable of being built until thousands of years in the future. As we hear in the world of Ice and Fire that Maester Kennett believes that round towers could not have existed before the arrival of the Andals, since the first men and the early Andals raised square towers and keeps, with Maester Kennett then going on to say that round towers came some time later. We also know that Bran the Builder was involved with the construction of the High Tower at Old Town upon request from Uthor Hightower. And finally, we also hear that he built the giant wall of ice in the north after the end of the previous Long Night to protect the realms of men. And if we look to the myths surrounding this mysterious figure, it appears that the magic of the old gods, the children of the forest, and the race of giants are all seemingly involved in his methods of construction. Which is interesting because if we look to the legend of the building of Storm's End, we hear that Bran the Builder is described as having been a small boy during the construction of this ancient castle. Which sounds highly unusual, as how could a small boy have any knowledge or skills to assist in the design or construction of this massive and legendary location, which was built with impossibly advanced skills and knowledge and has stood the test of time for thousands of years? Well, I think the answer lies in the fact that Bran the Builder had a close association with the old gods and the children of the forest, seemingly seeking their assistance when raising the wall after the Long Night, going so far as having learnt to speak the language of the children of the forest in order to seemingly utilise their magic, which sounds very reminiscent of another Brandon Stark we know, who also happens to be a small boy and has also sought out the children of the forest for their magic around the time of the Long Night as well. And to further Bran the Builder's connection to the magic of the old gods and the weirwoods, it seems as though Bran the Builder chose to build the ancestral seat of his house of Winterfell and the crypts below the earth, specifically beneath and around an existing weirwood, due to the fact we hear from Catelyn in A Game of Thrones that the eyes of the Winterfell Heart Tree had seen Bran the Builder set the first stone of the castle, a weirwood that Bran the Builder, a king of winter, would eventually be buried beneath. And to further reinforce the idea that Bran the Builder worshipped the old gods, we hear it directly noted in the world of Ice and Fire that he would pray to the Heart Tree in the godswood he built at Winterfell, all of which serve to inform us that Bran the Builder was heavily associated with the weirwoods, the magic of the children of the forest, and the worship of the old gods. And considering all this, what I'm suggesting is that Bran the Builder was most likely a skin changer and a Greenseer, just like his descendant with the same name, Bran Stark. And when it's said Bran the Builder sought out the children of the forest, I think that they awoke his genetic powers, just as we've seen occur with our current Bran Stark, who sought out the children of the forest beyond the wall to learn their magic as well. In fact, the parallels between Bran the Broken and Bran the Builder go so far that in the histories and lore videos put out by HBO to accompany the TV series A Game of Thrones during Season 1, Bran the Builder is depicted as having been carried around on a platform or litter, just as we find Bran the Broken being carried about after his fall, which seemingly woke his green-seeing and skin-changing powers in A Game of Thrones. And seeing as though George was so heavily involved in Season 1, this could possibly further the connections between both the ancient and present Brandon Starks, which I think further suggests Bran the Builder as a skin changer and Greenseer, just as our Bran the Broken is as well. And if this is indeed the case, This would make perfect sense as to how Bran the Builder had the knowledge to build such incredible structures while being a small boy, potentially using his Greenseer abilities to see forwards through time and learn the necessary skills required to build the round towers at Winterfell and Storm's End that seemingly don't fit the suspected timeline of ancient Westeros, and also explains why he built his ancestral seat of House Stark at the site of an existing and seemingly important weirwood. It's further suggested that Bran the Builder was a Greenseer when we hear his name mentioned by Sam in A Feast for Crows when speaking of kings who reigned for hundreds of years, which might be George further suggesting Brandon the Builder as a Greenseer, who, as we've already seen through the last Greenseer Bloodraven, can have their lives magically extended by sitting beneath a weirwood on a weirwood throne, allowing the heart tree to extend your life beyond your natural means, which would account for the reason why Bran the Builder would convert a hollow hill beneath a weirwood into an area full of thrones, which he and his descendants could be seated on, possibly allowing this weirwood to extend the lives of this line of the green-seeing kings of winter. And if Bran the Builder was in fact a Greenseer and skin changer like his descendant of the same name as I'm suggesting, this could explain how he was capable of building such enormous structures, because it's very interesting that we consistently see giants being mentioned around his methods of construction, with quotes such as this describing their involvement with the construction of the wall. Legend has it that the giants helped raise the wall, using their great strength to wrestle the blocks of ice into place. There may be some truth to this, though the stories make the giants out to be far larger and more powerful than they truly were. These same legends also say that the children of the forest, who did not themselves build walls of either ice or stone, would contribute their magic to the construction. The first thing to note is that we hear specific mention in this quote that the children of the forest have no skills at building walls of ice or stone, but still contributed their magic to the construction of this giant structure, which I think not only refers to the magical warding of the wall that it seems the children have the ability to use, as we see with the warding around Bloodraven's cave, but in my opinion might also allude to the use of the children's skin-changing magic in the construction of the wall as well. Because if we do some investigating, the idea of giants willingly building the wall seems like a contradiction, as when we hear a song sung by Ygritte while Jon is beyond the wall called The Last of the Giants, it seems the apparent message of this song is that the building of the wall was a negative for the race of giants, mentioning the fact that the construction of this wall reduced the access to their lands, with this fact seemingly contributing to the reduction in numbers of and eventual decline of the race of giants. So why would the giants help Bran the Builder build this wall if it divided their lands in two and they ended up discarded on the wrong side of this protective barrier alongside the ancient enemy of the others, the very enemy that the wall was seemingly built to withstand? Unless Bran the Builder was using the magic of the children of the forest to forcibly body snatch these giants, using them to build the wall for the realms of men against their will, in a rather twisted form of magical slavery, which could be why we hear Ygritte claim that the wall was built with blood, possibly referring to Bran the Builder committing a known skin-changing abomination and stealing the lives and bodies of these giants and using their great strength against their will for his own good. And a rather strong piece of evidence to suggest that this was the case is the fact that we see our current Bran Stark forcibly body-snatching a giant to carry out his will with the skin-changing of the gentle giant Hodor, further suggesting that Bran the Builder was also enslaving giants using his skin-changing powers to act on his behalf, just as we see the current Brandon Stark doing as well. And to further our theory that Brandon the Builder was in fact skin-changing giants and using them to build his famous structures, we hear something rather interesting while Jon Snow and Ygritte discuss the building of Queen's Crown in A Storm of Swords, with Ygritte questioning how men built this tower so high without the assistance of giants, with Jon then thinking to himself that the giants had in fact been a part of the construction of Winterfell, just as we heard they were involved with the building of the wall as well. But the interesting thing to note here is that Jon doesn't think that giants helped Bran the Builder raise Winterfell or that they even assisted him in this construction. He thinks that Brandon the Builder had used giants to help raise Winterfell, with the use of the word used only further suggesting the idea that Bran the Builder was indeed skin-changing giants and using them to build his legendary structures against their will. Another interesting aspect that suggests that the giants would never willingly help Bran the Builder is the fact that we hear in some tales that Bran the Builder's father was Brandon of the Bloody Blade, which makes sense with both figures having the name of Brandon, which is a very common and repeating name within House Stark. And what furthers our theory is that Brandon of the Bloody Blade was said to have driven the giants from the Reach, presumably in a bloody war, which leaves the question yet again as to why would the giants help the descendant of the person who drove them from their lands in a possible bloody war, unless Brandon of the Bloody Blade's descendant, Brandon the Builder, was forcibly body-snatching the enemy of his father to build his giant structures. And if Brandon the Builder is the son of Brandon of the Bloody Blade, this also means that Garth Greenhand was his grandfather, a person who is said to have planted weirwoods, demanded blood sacrifice, wore a crown of bronze and iron while at war like a king of winter, and sat upon a throne made from a living tree, which only reinforces the idea that Garth Greenhand's grandson Brandon the Builder was indeed a worshipper of the old gods and most likely a Greenseer as well. And if Bran the Builder was indeed skin-changing giants to build these locations and was an incredibly strong Greenseer and skin changer like our current Bran Stark, perhaps he was controlling more than one giant at a time, in the same way we're shown Baramir's Six Skins as controlling multiple beings at once as well. Perhaps Brandon the Builder was enslaving hundreds or thousands of giants to carry out his work, which could potentially explain how this small boy built so many legendary structures in one lifetime and in so many different locations. Perhaps Bran the Builder was sat on a throne as a king of winter in the converted hollow hill of the Winterfell crypts, extending his life using the weirwood above, dreaming from his Greenseer throne while controlling hundreds of giants to act on his behalf and build the new kingdom of men, which would give a whole new meaning to the often repeated term that what the king dreams, the hand builds. But what do you think? Was Brandon the Builder a Greenseer and skin changer? Did he extend his life to rule for hundreds of years using the weirwoods? And could he have been body-snatching giants in the ancient past to carry out his will, just as we see with our current Bran Stark doing to Hodor? And if you want more A Song of Ice and Fire content, check out my Grayscale Kings Beneath Winterfell theory with the link on your screen. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.